Hey there, everybody. Thanks for clicking on the video and welcome to my channel. I hope everybody's doing good out there today. I'm having one of those struggle bus mom types of days. My twins went to their summer school program they'll do for the next few weeks, and we're not used to getting up early. My daughter definitely hates it. It threw my son's whole day off, and transitions are hard in this house, so pray for me. That being said, I'm excited to, take some time and get out of that part of my brain and talk to you guys about Before the 90 Days, Season 6, Episode 9, The Big Chill. When we start off this episode, it's pretty much extremely heartbreaking. No, I don't think any of us were expecting it. And, that's usually how things like this happen, right? So, we start off with David and Sheila. And David spent his first night in Sheila's family home. Everyone went to sleep. It was normal. And when they woke up, they've discovered that Sheila's mom had passed away. From what they said, she was walking down the stairs and it wasn't nailed together properly, and she must have, I don't know, they didn't get too much into it, like fell and hit her head or something. But it was very tragic and unexpected, and I don't know why they kept, filming all of this. They could have just given a little update or something. But maybe, she was comfortable with it. Who knows? But we see poor Sheila. She's, she's crying uncontrollably. They show up immediately at her home with a casket. And they're all outside. She's telling Amy what happened. David, he says he's just gutted by this. And I'm sure everyone in this situation is just very traumatized by finding someone like that. And especially, David just meeting them the night before. And he's just trying to do his best to comfort her. And, he's a wonderful guy, honestly. He did everything he could do. So they take her mom and they go and set everything up at the chapel. And they start the wake that day. She says it's customary to stay with the body for 24 hours after death or it's bad luck. And she's going to stay there with her mom today, and her dad will tomorrow. And, just watching Sheila sob at her mother's casket was real hard. I'm sure there's a lot of people who just couldn't really watch it. I can't imagine this and what's going on in her head, especially being that David just got there and she was so worried and afraid to show him her home, and then he gets there and immediately this happens. Plus they're trying to get to know each other, and that's the farthest thing from her mind, and David's handling it really well. That being said, they decide that Sheila is going to stay with her mom and David's going to wait at the hotel. Before this, he did offer for her and her son to stay at a hotel with him. But she explains to David that she has to stay. And, it's been a long day, but she can't rest or be with David because it's her responsibility to be with her mom now. And she just thinks it's best that he goes to the hotel, rests, and she needs to be alone. So she drops him off. He, apologizes to her again. And, he's like, I'll be waiting here and you just be safe. And in the car on the way back, she just says she feels grieving. She's glad that David's so, understanding and trying to help her. And, he understands that she wants to be alone. So the next time we see them, they're loading up the casket in the hearse to take it to Sheila's mother's funeral. David, he's still heartbroken for her, and, I'm sure we all are. It's horrible. We never expect stuff like this on the show, I don't think. But, you know, David spent the last few nights alone at the hotel. Sheila, you know, she's been with her family at her mom's wake. And he just wants to be there for her because seeing her upset is just really painful for him. And on that note, I have never seen a funeral like this. And neither has he. And he said it was like a parade with all the people. And they basically were all walking behind the hearse on the way to the cemetery. And he was noticing like the motorcycles and traffic were just zooming by as they were going. And he just, you know, he doesn't understand it. And I'm sure he can't hear it, so he probably feels the vibrations of them coming. So we hear a little from Sheila, and she's just been crying day and night, and she's just physically and mentally exhausted. And she's just, you know, really understanding that her mom isn't there. She doesn't have that person to talk to her about her problems, or she doesn't hear her mom, you know, yelling her name. And it just hasn't sunk in yet. So while we're watching this, I noticed that they have a really interesting system for their dead. Like they put the casket in some type of slot in the wall. And there's like a long cement wall with lots of little compartments for the caskets. And they just like slide it in and put a headstone over it, I think. I was noticing, you know, it's a lot different than when someone passes away in America. I don't know what they did or do with the body, obviously, but from what we saw, it wasn't like sent to a funeral home and like embalmed and all that stuff. They just took it to the chapel. So I thought it was really cool. I'm actually a big fan of cemeteries, and I love to go look at them and visit. So I was definitely interested in this. And, you know, it's hard for Sheila to lose her mother, even though she feels she didn't live up to her expectations. And I bet she did. From the outside looking in, Sheila is a great person. She's very positive about her life. She's a great mom. She's taking care of everyone. And she's making the best with what she had. So I think her mom was pretty proud of her. You know, and after a minute, Sheila's just getting emotional and she doesn't want to talk about it. As they're like pulling away from the cemetery, they leave like a little pile of something burning in front of the grave in the wall slot. And I don't know what that's about. So if anyone knows what that is, please let me know. I guess I could Google it, but this seems more fun. After that, we jump to 5 hours later. They're in the cab. They're tired. You know, she doesn't want to stay in the house that her mother passed in. So she's just going to go to the hotel with David. Her son's going to stay with family and friends. He's, you know, asking her what's her plan for tomorrow. She's going to go to the chapel for rosary in the afternoon. And, you know, David, he just feels out of place. He doesn't want to burden Sheila at such a sad time. She says, you know, it's hard for her because she hasn't let herself grieve for her mother. And it's just hard to focus on that and David. And I can't imagine it would be possible to focus on anything else when you're going through something like this. And, you know, David's supporting her, but she's worried that she can't give him the love he expects because she needs time now. And honestly, I think he's going to understand that. He is one of the like sweetest, most caring people I've seen on this show. The way he handled like her home and her lifestyle and all of that with like grace and didn't judge her, and he just went with the punches, and now he's doing that again. This is probably one of the, if not the only couple on here I feel genuine love between, and my heart just breaks for her, and I'm so sorry she had to go through that. Especially the timing was really bad, but you know, at least David was there to be there for her. It probably would have been hard on their relationship had this happened and he was still in the United States, and I think this will bond them and bring them closer in a way, and she'll learn that she can trust him and depend on him and lean on him when she was having a problem trusting him before. So that's where I'm going to end it with them. I'm just very sad at the whole thing, and I definitely had a tear or two. Well, let's lighten it up a little bit with these two crazy kids, Gino and Jasmine. It is the day after their therapy session, and Gino's feeling good. He's glad they went. He feels productive. And today they're at the mall walking around. He still has concerns about the arguing, but he does think they need to focus on making positive memories while he's still there. They end up in a jewelry shop. My first thought was Jasmine wants a ring. But turns out they're there to get something for her little sister Liz's birthday. But she also said other things, so I knew a ring was on her agenda. Jasmine says today is Liz's 20th birthday. I could have sworn this girl was 16. I had no idea that she was 20. She looks great for her age, I guess. So she says, since Liz has been living with them and putting up with all the crap for 2 weeks, Gino agreed to get her something special. They pick out this beautiful necklace for her. It has an L on it. Jasmine loves it. Gino is probably worried about the price, but I was impressed that he didn't ask about how much it cost. He was just like, all right, let's get that. So then we move on to the engagement rings, because they're about to wrap that up, and Jasmine's like, oh, well, we're here. Let's look at the rings. And Gino's like, why? You already have a ring. Apparently, Jasmine lost it. He doesn't believe her. She says she accidentally lost it. He's like, well, did you even like the ring? And of course she didn't. He bought it based on it being the cheapest ring of his options at the time. And she's like, well, yeah, it's meaningful, but it's not something I would buy or I would give to someone else. So then she is like, he promised to upgrade it before she lost it. And then she says, this girl is full of just cutting this man down to his soul, I think, because she tells him she wears the ring from her previous marriage because it was nicer. And Gino is like, that's terrible. And she's like, it doesn't represent her ex in her mind. It's just a nicer ring. And Gino's like, well, yeah, but that's like me wearing a necklace my ex gave me. And she's like, what necklace? Who gave you a necklace? He's like, no, how would you feel? And she's like, where's the necklace? And she says he was being cheap, so she found a solution. Meaning, we all know she didn't lose the ring. She threw that thing in the ocean or something. So she sees one she likes, and he's like, babe, you don't need a ring now. We need to focus on your sister's birthday. And she's like, yeah, we already got that figured out over there. And he's like, I told you I'd buy you a ring after visa approval and before the wedding, but not now. And she's like, don't use that as an excuse. And actually, the visa's taking forever. The immigration says that by 13 months, 80% of these cases go through. She's mad. She doesn't want to wait this long. She wants him to get a lawyer. And he's like, no, we haven't hit the timing. And he's like, look, lady, if you want a lawyer, you pay for it, and then we can have one. And she's like, it's always about money. Well, of course it is. That's all it's about for her, too. And he's spending it, so he doesn't want another expense. If she's that worried about it, I agree. She could pay for it. And, he doesn't want to waste his money. She turns that around to him saying she's a waste of money, which almost, he's hemorrhaging money into her. So he tells us that he's insulted that she would think he needs an immigration lawyer because he already went through this process. His ex-wife is from Brazil, And he brought her here on the K-1 visa without a lawyer. He, feels that she's manipulating him to get him to buy her a ring. And, that's not what they came here for. And she's like, well, fine, you should be spending your money on a lawyer to get her here. He's like, don't tell me what to do. I'm the one who did all the work. I took hours of my life figuring it all out. And he tells her she knows nothing and she's clueless. And she's like, why are you being a jerk? And he's like, change your attitude because we're about to have huge problems. Gino's been trying to put his big boy pants on the last couple episodes, and I'm here for it, but the way he does it is so, he tries to be forceful, but he's also afraid, so you almost don't believe him. It's like me trying to use a dad voice or something. I don't have one. But he's trying to put his foot down, and he's doing pretty well. Because after that, he tells the workers, no, we're not buying a ring today. She can buy her own ring, and he takes off. Now, a couple things. First of all, I do think that if someone is going to buy you a ring, you can't demand them to do it. I would, prefer them to do it on their own and then surprise you with it or something, because then it's not as special when you have to force them. There was times that I have bought my own ring, and it was because that's the one I want. But at the same time, it's nicer if someone oh, I wanted to make this commitment to you, so I, by my own free will, went to go do it. I think that's normal. The second thing, the immigration lawyer isn't going to guarantee this process move any faster. Angela had an immigration lawyer / therapist for years. Michael still isn't over here. I haven't seen anybody with an immigration lawyer have things go faster or better. They end up on the show for a couple minutes, tell us basically what Gino said, and that's about it. I mean, they could submit the forms and paperwork. I don't know exactly what they do. I'm sure there was another. It's just these immigration lawyers just are basically spelling out what it says in layman's terms so people like me can understand what I have to do, right? But I don't think that having a lawyer makes the process any faster because we haven't seen that happen. So, yeah, the ring. Jasmine shouldn't feel entitled to anything. Honestly, she should be grateful for what he does for her. He says, she pulls this shit all the time, basically. And apparently the K-1 visa is just a touchy subject for her. She's been living 12 months in limbo, and she feels like spending the money on a lawyer is important. And I feel like he said, well, then pay for it if it's that important. You've been literally not working for a year, living in a beautiful apartment. And I don't know where she lived before this 1 month, but I guarantee you it wasn't dilapidated or whatever. She wouldn't live in a place that wasn't a little bougie. So I think she's been fine. But she's convinced the lawyer will accelerate the process. And like I said, she should hire one and find out. So at this point, Jasmine is in the store. She's crying. She's sick and tired of him, and he's just a jerk. Later, they get back home. Jasmine gives her sister the gift by herself. Gino's in the other room. Her sister loves it. Gino's like, okay, let's go have a good day for Liz. She deserves it. And Jasmine's like, yeah, I know. And they're just waiting for the elevator, and they both start talking at once to Liz. And Gino is like, well, do you feel a year wiser now? And Jasmine and Liz have no idea what that means. Liz is like, yeah, a little. And Jasmine's like, what does that mean? He says it's a saying. And then they're walking away, and she mumbles that he's a fool in Spanish under her breath. But, somewhere on the cold shoulder ride home, Gino had time to think about it. and his behavior at the jewelry store wasn't okay. He feels like he could have handled that better. And, he reacted to her anger with anger, which is exactly what the therapist told him not to do. And, he's not sure where they're standing right now, but it shouldn't affect Liz's birthday. So they're going to go ride this bike. It has like 4 seats, 2 in front, 2 in back, and everybody pedals. So they're going there. She tells him it's called the Causeway. She barely wants to talk to him the whole ride there. And he's like, well, why haven't we been here? And she's like, Gino, I took you there a few days ago. And this petty mofo was like, well, are you sure it was me? That was good. So, she's still bad about this morning. She says, it's one thing to not want to buy a ring, but it's another to refuse to get an immigration lawyer. She feels he has no urgency to bring her, and that she's more invested in this relationship than she is. So they get there, they get on the, bike thing. Gino's not the best driver. He, smacks Jasmine in the head with a nearby tree branch. And then, they almost run right into traffic. But they're laughing and having fun. And while they're pedaling, she wants Gino to let her know when he gets tired, so he doesn't have a heart attack. And he's like, well, do you think I'm a shriveled old prune? And she's like, well, you don't have stamina for sex, so why do you have it for this? And her sister's in the back kind of laughing. And I just want to say that they are a horrible example of a relationship for this young girl to be like looking to as an example of a relationship. So hopefully that doesn't affect her in the future. He's surprised. He says, yes, he does have stamina. Jasmine always basically gets her end of things. And she's like, no, when we do it, I fake it. And, she's never crossed that finish line. He doesn't believe her. They seem to be joking. He says this is what he was hoping for, laughing and smiling. And this reminds him of why he loves her. And I'm wondering, like, when she's yelling at him and she's mad at him and she's like, you're the worst lover I ever had. My ex is better than you. And all of that, he gets really hurt and offended. And it's probably because she's angry and he can tell the difference. Maybe he knows when she's joking. But at this point, whenever she said anything like that to me, I would be upset. So I don't know why it's okay for her to joke about it to him, but he gets upset when she says it otherwise. Like I said, I know there's a difference, but it seems like she delivers it the same. Like she was very serious when she was saying that to him. Maybe that's how he knew she was joking. Anyway, they arrive at a destination. They're going to have ice cream. He's having a good time. He knows like one night isn't going to fix all their problems, but it's a good start. They sit down and, Gino has something in his hand for Jasmine. And it's a ring. A promise ring that he's going to try to do better to avoid arguments and things with her. And also to provide her with more meat. All the things the therapist said, basically. Sorry, excuse me. He asks if she likes it, and she does. And now they're like making out at the table during the sisters' dinner. He says he snuck away by the bike shop to get it for her. But it's a promise ring, not an engagement one. She's going to get the engagement one when she gets to America. And she's, I like that it has 2 hearts for each of them. And she thinks he planned that and that he's so romantic. And then she sends Gino, who can't speak Spanish, and had him order the ice cream. And she knows he can't speak it, and she just has a good laugh at him. And, she's glad he's putting in effort, and she knows that she's going to have work to do as well. So that's where we leave them this week. Like I said, she needs to get her own lawyer if she's so worried about it. I don't know why they had to go and like make the sisters' birthday dinner awkward and about themselves. I wonder if that ring is like a $40 fake ring, because how is he gonna just see a ring shop right next to the bike place? Maybe it was a little stand. I don't know. But he's confident that she's gonna come over here and he'll get her a better one. Anyway. So that was Gino and Jasmine. They're still a mess. All right. Thank you, anyone who's still watching. Everyone who's still watching. Thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, to my channel, and comment what you thought about this. Next, I want to move on to Statler and Dempsey. They wake up. It's Statler's first night in the caravan, which I believe is just a English word for trailer. And she wants to know how Statler slept. Apparently it wasn't very good. She was very cold, and cold equals Statler's hell, basically. So Dempsey's like, oh, so you just don't like it? And she's like, it's nice, it's just uncomfortable. Dempsey says she was so excited waking up and having her there, and now she feels bad that she's uncomfortable, because there's a difference between saying I'm still settling into the new surroundings versus being uncomfortable. She's not sure if it's her or the space making Statler uncomfortable, and I think, it's the space. But then Dempsey starts to sage and clear the energies. She says people would call her a little hippie or spiritual, and she says that she protects her energy. She puts a protective shield around her in the mornings, which is actually very important to do. I need to do that more often. And I need to sage. Anyway, Statler's kind of teasing her, so she teases her back and starts, saging her lady parts and saying, oh, it needs to be saged a lot. It's been places. And Statler's like, well, that's not offensive at all. And she's like, well, you told me. And then she continues to sage the slut out of Statler, basically. Statler says she's not ashamed or embarrassed about her sexual history, but apparently it bothers Dempsey a little. And it's like, well, yeah, I think it would, especially the way she talks about it. Dempsey tells Statler she's off to go get firewood, so she's going to leave her to get settled in. And, Dempsey's just worried Statler might not get used to the farm life. But she loves it. And it's an easy, simple life. And she's used to living like this. Her family lived in caravans all her life. And she moved a lot, because she's a Carney kid. And her family goes back generations. And they would travel all over London setting up carnivals. And I believe that would make her a gypsy. I've seen some documentaries about the gypsies in London, and they're like Carney folks, which is so cool. I just love her the more I hear about her. Then we, find out that her parents had 3 daughters, and they were her best friends. But when she was 16, her 19-year-old sister passed away. She died of carbon monoxide poisoning in her sleep. So she left home at 18. She was unhappy. She couldn't live that life there without her sister. So she kind of ended up couch surfing. Nothing was making her happy. And then she met her friend Ben on the farm. And he offered her to stay there and have a job. And she did. At the time she had nothing to lose. She says they make shipping containers people use as houses. And when they said that, I wasn't sure what they were talking about until later we see them, and they're so cool. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So Dempsey thinks that everything happens for a reason. And, you can't sit and dwell on it. And, she just believes in being positive and making the best of it. Statler is starting to hear all the noise and all the construction. And she says she was trying to be positive last night, but now that she's settled in, she's noticing, it's smaller than she thought. She can't shower. There's no hot water. She's going to have to poop at some point, and she's hoping she doesn't have to while Dempsey's gone, or she's going to come back to the vision of her squatting in the field. Like, didn't she show her an outhouse? Honestly. And if I was in that small of a area with someone, I'd be happy to go outside somewhere else, because I'm weird about that stuff. I need my privacy and my space. So that wouldn't bother me. She says that Dempsey doesn't know she wants to move in with her, but she just isn't comfortable there. She's cold. She's realizing there isn't space for her. And, it's in the middle of nowhere. She's not sure that she wants to live there, and that scares her because apparently her lease is about to be up, and this was her only plan. So later in the day, they're going out on the farm. She asks her if it's as cold as she thought, and Statler says it's colder than she thought. And, Dempsey just thinks the caravan makes Statler nervous. She thinks she has a perception it's a dirty farm that stinks. But it's a really beautiful place, and people travel from all over to go stay there. And she's excited to show her around and introduce her to people in her life. So this is where they come up on the containers, and that's where people go and stay on vacation. And they have like hot tubs and stuff, and it looks so much fun. And they're just these tiny little containers, and I would love it. I don't like camping because I don't like bugs and heat. I'm kind of a princess, but I don't like sleeping on the ground either. And this looked fun. This is something I could do. So we find out that Dempsey's day consists of waking up at 5:30, cleaning the containers, and she does like the housekeeping and the cooking. She loves to cook. And then she brings Statler into this very cool, chill area for the guests where like she goes and mingles with them, and they make pizzas, and she's like, well, I make pizzas and they eat them. And she shows her this cool little game room with a pool table and Jenga and a TV, and there's all these cool cars in there. And it's like Statler had no reaction. Like, I think she'd be a little more excited to see like some fun indoor type activities where they could have some space and walk around and get, they're not smushed up in the trailer. But she didn't, I don't know. She seemed unimpressed. And they leave that little room and they come back to the bar, and Dempsey's friend Ben is there, and she's excited and she runs up and hugs him, and they haven't seen each other since she went to Thailand on vacation. Statler's there. She awkwardly says hi and hugs him. Dempsey says Ben is her friend. He owns the company where she works. She loves him. He's important in her life. He's seen her go through a lot of things, a lot of struggles. So if Ben doesn't like Statler, that's probably going to be a problem. And, he's teasing Statler. He can tell that she's from the States by her accent. And, she tells him she met Dempsey on a dating app, that she likes the British ladies. And he's like, wow, you came all this way just for her. And she's like, well, yeah, it was the last thing because we already had the emotional connection and all the other connections, so we needed physical. And then they notice that Dempsey is blushing. And Ben's like, oh, she's fidgeting. That means you've already had the physical and you've only been here a day. He says he hasn't seen her this excited in a long time. His interview comes up and he thinks the online thing is crazy, let alone the online thing with someone from another country. He is surprised that they hooked up so quickly. He says they're different, like chalk and cheese, which he basically defines as just being opposites. And, he's just not sold on Statler yet because they only met online. Then he starts asking her about Thailand. And he asked Statler what she thought about her being there so long and if they talked. And she says, the communication was crappy, but she was living her best life. And he's like, yeah, you gotta let her be. It's the party capital of the world. And she said that the communication made her feel rejected and she's still insecure. And she wants to ask her if she was with other people. Like later tonight, she wants to ask her, but she's afraid. He says he expected Dempsey to be happy when she got back, but not this happy. And, later the girls are cooking. And by the girls cooking, I mean Dempsey is cooking. It's the first vegan meal she's making Statler. Statler's used to eating out of a microwave, so she's not going to be a lot of help here, but she's going to try. And that made me think, obviously her diet is terrible as well, so no wonder she has, irritable bowels. Why don't you just eat some roughage now and then, or learn to cook? A little bit, just a little. You can't live on... She was eating a Hungry Man dinner, now that I remember when we first saw her. That's what she was eating, so she did not lie. Dempsey dares her to eat some raw garlic, and she does. Now her mouth is on fire. And after a good mouth rinse, they go for some wine, and Statler's saying she needs to talk about this Thailand stuff for them to move forward. She tells her that she didn't expect things to be going as well between them as they are because of how terrible communication was in Thailand. She says she felt like she was doing other things, meeting other people, cheating. And Dempsey's like, what? Why would you say that? And she says, before her dad left, she talked to her every day. And then when he left, she barely heard from her. Dempsey says that she told her, the time is different, there's no Wi-Fi. And she's, shocked that she would think she was cheating. Statler's tearing up and saying, so you didn't meet anyone else? And Dempsey's like, no, that wouldn't even cross my mind. And she's like, well, that's what everyone says. And, she's used to people saying that and doing something else. And Dempsey's like, listen, have you ever cheated on anyone? And she's like, well, once, yeah. And she's like, I've never cheated on anyone ever. And now she feels like that's a red flag that Statler has, is that she's cheated before. And she asks, why would she think that? And, she says she's, putting her past on her, and she's embarrassed that she isn't as healed as she should be. Dempsey's like, don't be embarrassed, and they need to move forward. And that she makes her laugh, and she makes her happy. Statler says it's hard for her to trust people. And Dempsey, does provide her with reassurance and safety. And she wants to get Dempsey to let her move there, and she's nervous because she's meeting her dad tomorrow. He's real protective, and that could be a make or break it for them. Now, what I have to say about this is the reason that she probably talked to her every day when her dad was there was most likely that they were staying in a nice resort or somewhere with accommodations and Wi-Fi. And when her dad left, it sounds like Dempsey just went for the backpacking through this place in Thailand life. And yeah, there's a big time difference. She went from being the daughter with the dad, probably getting spoiled, to just being a lone person in Thailand. So I could see why the communication was bad, and she explained that to her. And Statler's definitely projecting some things here because she's cheated on people. People have cheated on her. She knows what her lifestyle is like, and that's nowhere near what Dempsey's is. So, yeah. I'm excited for them to meet Dad next week. Okay, moving on, we're going to talk about Riley and Violet. After that terrible dinner date, we catch up with Riley, and he's like, it was supposed to be a nice dinner, a real date, just enjoying each other's company. Well, he immediately ruined it. you know, he could have called his friend another day. Where was the calling his friend energy at the war artifact museum or something? Had to be there. They were finally getting along. He says he wished things didn't get so heated, but he felt so insulted. He's upset with himself that he let it happen and that he, act that way publicly and in a foreign country. He doesn't, regret telling her he's done with the nonsense, but, he blocked her and he has nothing to say to her. Then we get to hear Violet's side. She's still angry and disrespected by Riley and Tiffany for trying to make her answer questions she isn't comfortable with. So she invited her daughter to go out shopping with her so she can de-stress a little bit. She asked her mom where she went last night and why she was back so early. And she tells her, she was having dinner with Mr. Riley. She was impressed with him and how he dressed and how he was talking. And all of a sudden he changed. He wanted to call his friend, who is like a sister, and she was asking her things with an interrogative voice. But she still answered. But, she was totally impolite for doing that. The daughter suggests that maybe he didn't think his friend would talk like that to her. And she's like, well, if he didn't, he probably should have stopped her and protected her. But he didn't. And that's true. They set that up. He talked to her right before that dinner and was like, I'm going to call you in 20 minutes. She was ready. And instead of protecting her, he made her answer the questions. And she can't be in a relationship with a man that she feels can't protect her. And that's part of why she got a divorce. She says after she had her second child, her mother-in-law was mad it wasn't a boy because she had enough girls. And her ex didn't raise his voice to protect her, someone who just had a baby. And his child. And ever since then, she remembers, the day her ex-husband didn't protect his wife. And last night, Riley didn't protect her. And she's not going to forget that the rest of her life either. She says she sent Riley a long message and blocked him. And I kind of believe she was the one who blocked him. But they're both saying they blocked each other. Who do you believe? Who do you think blocked who? So, then we skip over to Riley back in the bed saying she sent a message and he blocked her after. And he didn't read it. And he's like, should I read it? Like he hasn't read it a few times by now. And she tells him, he was supposed to protect her. He trampled and insults her. He doesn't deserve to be a man. If he came here to meet her and her family, they're allowed to ask questions. And when she is in his country, then they can ask her questions. She calls him, he has a terrible attitude. And if she doesn't like it, to go away. He says it just sounds like everything is her way or the highway. He can't ask her anything, and he's just built this way. He asks questions. He's disappointed because he put a lot, of emotion and effort and time into this in the last 2 years. They've talked about a family, and now he just doesn't know if it can be salvaged or if anyone wants it to be. Her daughter's like, look, you guys are adults. You aren't playing games. If you want this to work, you have to find another way to reach him. And Violet's like, no way, he can contact me. It's his fault. Riley's saying the same thing. He would meet with her if she reaches out to him and apologize because he has nothing to explain to her. So basically with these two, we're at a standstill. And at this point, everyone thinks the other person's wrong. They both feel owed an apology. Neither of them have fault here. Later on, Riley gets picked up by a tour guide on a little motorcycle bike. scooter type thing to go out and see the city. Even though he had a big fight with Violet, he's going to go out and do things. He's a pretty big guy on a little bike with a much smaller man driving him. And it's funny. And I bet all the other people driving around them were a little distracted. I don't think you see that every day. He says he does ride motorcycle, but being on the road in Ho Chi Minh City is so cool. There's a lot of activity on the road, and he just hopes they make it in one piece. We see some pictures of like some beautiful landmarks. It's a beautiful city, and he says it just sucks he's not experiencing it with Violet. You know, he was ready to fly home, but he thought about it, and he just feels bad about his reaction. You know, in his past, a lot of women had lied to him, and it messed him up. So he already doesn't believe people, and he just might have been a little too sensitive, and I just think he was too angry. So they end up at this little cool looking bar. They order drinks. The tour guide asks how long he's been there. He's been there 6 days. A lot has happened to him in 6 days, and none of it very good, actually. He says, you know, he came to meet someone, but she's beautiful. Or she is beautiful, but she's crazy. And he just doesn't understand women there. He tells the tour guide about the argument. He said that the problem here is he is treating his friend as family, and there, you know, family is family and friends are friends. And Riley's like, oh, it would have been more accepting if it was from my dad. Maybe. Maybe you should have called your dad and had him do it. But I think the dad is above that drama because he ignored her 75 texts or whatever. So, you know, he's like, I'm not sure if Violet tried saying that to me or if I was just too mad I couldn't hear it. And the tour guide's like, you need to apologize. And he's like, well, I blocked her. And the tour guide's like, she should be blocking you. And he tells him to unblock her and try to meet up and apologize. So, you know, he thanks the tour guide for therapying him. And he says, you know, he realizes he's going about this the wrong way. And he just needs to rethink his strategy. And he's going to unblock her and apologize and try to meet up with her. That's only going to work if she also unblocks him. Because you both have to unblock each other. I think these two will meet up again. It seems that the people they were talking to both encouraged them to reach out and at least clear the air. And I know Violet's too stubborn to do that, so Riley's definitely going to have to. And I don't think this was the last fight that we're going to see between these guys. Okay, guys, last but not least, Christian and Cleo. My first thought when they came up was, oh my god, they're going to Portobello Road, like Bedknobs and Broomsticks. And I was fangirling so hard right now. I love that movie. I love the song. And in the movie, you know, they're all dancing on Portobello Road. And it's like, Portobello Road. You know what I'm talking about? I loved it. And I couldn't believe they were going there. So I'm excited about that. But then this uncultured swine, Christian, is like, did they sell mushrooms there or something? And she's like, no, I'm not sure why it's called that. I'm not sure either. But I would describe the place as a type of swap meet or flea market on a street. So Cleo's catching us up to speed. It's been 2 days since he arrived in London. So far, things are, you know, good and bad. Yesterday, it was their first date, and it didn't go well. And when they got home, she just fell right asleep, and there wasn't any intimacy. So they're shopping around, and she says, you know, she comes there often, and she's hoping that they can get closer being in one of her favorite places. They look at some rings, not like engagement way, just looking. they look at some crystals, and I'm like, sweet, I love her even more all the time. She's immediately drawn to a crystal, and the lady working says, you will be drawn to crystals that you need. And that's very true. Cleo ends up picking a tiger's eye, and it's good for courage and motivation. And it's also good for grounding and transformation, if you were wondering. So she said it's good for courage and motivation, especially if you're beginning something new, like a relationship. So he buys it for her as a gift, for something to remember him by, I think is what he said. And he puts it on her, they kiss. He says, their first date wasn't flawless. And she has told him things that affect her being autistic, but seeing and experiencing them in person shows him there's more things he needs to learn about it. He should have done that in the first place. How could he tell him he's okay dating an autistic woman, aside from the fact that she's trans, without Googling what that means? What that life means. Nobody ever does research. So he's realizing that last night he was pushing her to do stuff that she was uncomfortable with, or that maybe she was uncomfortable with. Excuse me, maybe. But Christian wants to turn things around. He doesn't want last night to ruin his whole trip. They stop at a nice little fish and chips restaurant. She feeds him some of it. He likes it. He says it's probably good hangover food. And she's like, yeah, that's perfect for today. He's like, oh man, those drinks were big and they pour so heavy. He said at first she seemed okay and then she seemed overwhelmed. And she's like, well, it might be cliche, but I think when you're on a first date with a girl, it should be about you two. And he felt the need to make it about a larger group of girls. He's like, I didn't care about talking to them, and he doesn't want her to think he was giving her the cold shoulder. And he was, and he did want to talk to them. That's why he did it. And just because he was drunk, he was doing what he wanted to do. She's like, you didn't include me in the conversation. You just mentioned my name. And I sure as heck aren't going to go on a date with you and start talking to a group of guys, chatting them up, telling them about myself. When I'm on a date with you, trying to get to know you. He gets that and he feels stupid. She says she already had to worry about how being trans will affect the relationship. And now she's worried about how being on the spectrum will. And that's the problem, is she was upfront with him about all these things. And he was gung-ho for it, telling her he could handle it. And now look at him, backtracking. So she's also afraid that if she tells him she wasn't comfortable at the bar, he's going to be turned off. And I just hope that someone tells her what he did was so messed up, and someone who wasn't on the spectrum would have been upset and maybe even caused a scene and would have been just as uncomfortable probably. She did say that she tells him, she had a good time at some points, but she hated that place. There are bars and places that she likes that are more open, and she was just claustrophobic in there. He tells her he's worried that date is going to put a damper on the trip because, he doesn't want her to worry that everywhere they go, this will happen. And that's going to make her not want to go out with him. And she doesn't want to just have to go places to accommodate her. She wants him to experience things that he wants. Then she has an interview where she says, she always feels that she's at fault and she's a burden being autistic. And it broke my heart when she said that. And, they cut back to him and he's saying, this trip isn't about him and he didn't come here to see London and have her join him as arm candy. And she just wants him to be happy, and he says he is. And she's just worried this is going to be too much for him. And she could probably feel that it is, because he's acting like it is. You know, he says he's learning, and last night he learned something he won't forget. And, you know, it's just trial and error at this point. So later they appear to be having a nice evening at home, and they're getting wine. He's like, you know, this is the point in the evening that normally calls for sexy music. She's like, oh, do you have any? He's like, no, that would be weird. I don't have a baby making playlist. She's like, oh, baby making. Well, that would be hard with me. And he's like, oh, okay, noted. Well, I'm going to go get the wine now. You know, he just wants to get closer and have a nice night and make up for his horrible mistakes from the night before. He says that he has something special for her that maybe she hasn't experienced before, and he goes to get it. And, you know, she tells us they're having a cozy night and they can talk and it's more intimate. There's not a bunch of people around, and this feels more like the first date she was hoping for to her. So she's open to him making a move on her, and she hopes that he does. So he returns with a virtual reality headset. She's never tried one. He thinks this will bring him back to the beginning when they bonded over the fact that they're both gamers. And he thinks it's romantic to share hobbies. She's playing some virtual reality zombie game. She thinks it's cool. It's done with less detail than reality, so it's less overwhelming. So that's probably good for her. Then we get a little time jump of an hour. He's in the interview. He says that there's times he feels things are more awkward than they should be, and it stems from the pressure he's putting on himself to be intimate. You know, he wants to take it slow because he's never been with a trans woman, and he doesn't know what it would be like, if they'll be compatible, or if he'd be comfortable with her anatomy. When he said that, I was like, what happened to when he was talking to his friends and they asked about her anatomy, and he said, oh, that's her business to talk about. But he's talking about it now, and maybe he should tell this to her. I think she can handle it. But anyway, he doesn't want to rush it and not be comfortable with it, and then that's a deal breaker. He gets into bed, she comes out, she does a little twirly twirl for him. They're sitting there awkward. She tells him she had a great night and it, you know, made up for yesterday. But she has a weird question. And she's like, you know, I think we're both attracted to each other. And he's like, yeah, we are, but I'm glad they're taking time to get to know each other in person. And she's like, well, it's good to know that they're attracted to each other. And the way she kind of asks questions or says stuff, it's like, she says statements and then needs like reassurance from him, and he just never picks up on that. Like, oh, he's out of my league. Thank you. You're attracted to me, right? Oh yeah, but I'm glad it's going slow. Like, he's so contradictory, and he doesn't give her like any self-esteem, confidence boost. You know, like, my boyfriend would be hyping me up all the time. I don't have to worry about that, and like, nobody should. So, you know, he doesn't want her to think that he isn't attracted to her because they're not intimate. And he puts up some BS about how he waits for the girl to make the first move. And she's like, yeah, that's not me. I would never do that. And it made me think, and I don't know too much about this subject, but I've heard of, you know, trans people being attacked and things just because they're trans. And I think it would be hard for like a trans woman to just like kiss a man without their permission out of fear of violence or something, you know? And I mean, I know this is a little different because they're together and they know these things, but it would be hard to get over that fear of initiating it, especially for like rejection purposes. So, you know, that's not her. She would never make a move. Not the first move. And he's like, well, I get that, but I want to feel wanted. And if I go in for a kiss and get rejected, that sucks. And she's like, but we've kissed already, though. Like, you have the green light. So then he says some more BS about if he tried to hold her hand or grab her butt and she got mad, it would just set him back a little bit. What kind of crap is this? As if this guy has never grabbed an ass without verbal consent from a girlfriend before. Half the time people will like grab or smack your butt when you're walking by, when you're in a relationship. It's not that abnormal. Like, he is grasping at straws at this point for some excuse because he's changed his mind and he doesn't feel the same way about her. And it was too much for him to handle. And he was living in fantasy land. So he basically tells her, it'll happen when it happens. We just gotta see. But yeah, I'm gonna get some sleep, so good night. And she says, she's known from the beginning physical things are like super important to him. And he's always been so flirtatious with her. And for him to say he's someone that would wait for her to make the first move, like, she isn't buying it. Now she's insecure. Her alarm bells are going off because he's full of it. That is such crap. And I'm going to say it again. I've met so many guys like this where I live because I also happen to live in Minnesota. And this is like a common thing. I wanted you to make the first move. Oh, I just want to take it slow. Meanwhile, they're the town bicycle. They've been with everybody. They're grabbing people. They're initiating makeout sessions. But then it comes to you and they want to take it slow. She needs to get out of there. For real. So, that being said, thank you everyone for joining me and sticking around and getting my head out of my stressful day. Sorry if I seem tired or anything. I had to wake up at 6 a.m., like I said. So, I'm just floating through life at this point. But I appreciate you. I'm going to have, catching up on the other way after this. Well, actually, I have the new Match Me Abroad after this, and then I'm going to catch up on the other way. But we're getting there. We're just trucking through. Thank you guys for sticking around. Don't forget to, do something that makes you happy and take some deep breaths and like the video and subscribe. Bye.